In a video last week we saw that Jack Hackett here bumps around over frogs on the points. People made some helpful suggestions that the gap in the frogs was too big, as if this is something I hadn't worked out for myself, but hey, there you go. I've devised a way of trying to improve this, and in this video I'm going to show you how I did it and what I used to do it with. And in this little slow motion section you can see exactly what the problem is and where it occurs. The Loco has small diameter fine scale wheels running on LGB rails that are coarse scale with coarse scale points. To make the point frogs longer and therefore more prototypical, I'm using epoxy putty reinforced with steel, some super glue, straight bars of copper in this case, but I can use other things to make a shape to force the putty down into, standing knife for trimming off the excess, and a file for filing it down once it's hard. And in the corner there you can see some meths. Here's the problem we have. This wagon is LGB and has coarse scale flanges, and these are designed to ride on the plastic bit in the groove over the coarse scale point frogs rather than riding on the rails. So here we go. Nitrile gloves are a bit of a must here because I can't stand the feel of the epoxy resin on my fingers. Cleaning out the flange area as best I can to make sure that things stick when they need to. Having done this last year with some other points, I've realised that I will also need some super glue. The shape that occurs is absolutely right, but it tends to be very loosely held or not held at all because the area of contact is small. So what I do is let it harden off once I've shaped it and everything, and then take it out carefully and glue it back on with super glue. As an aside, what you can also see here is that I have increased the height and reduced the thickness of the gap of the check rails using some copper strip. So there is a piece of epoxy resin prior to being mixed, epoxy putty reinforced with steel. It has to be just about black before it can be put into place. Here I am making the shape I need with the pieces of copper strip. It's 1.5mm thick, so it's quite rigid, but still small enough to fit into the flange way. I've since moved on to 2mm brass square section tubing. Pushing the mixed putty down into the gap I've created here, the shape I want, which will extend the point frog, and then peeling off the excess. Most of the rest of this can be done later, but this section has to be done while the putty is soft. It's got a working time of less than 5 minutes, so this next section has to be done at a degree of pace, but without cutting corners and hopefully without making too many mistakes. While the putty is still soft and workable, I push the LGB wagon through several times. It has metal wheels and it will cut the putty where I need it to be cut, at least give me a guideline where to cut it later, and will form the shape I want. So a fair bit of pressure put on this wagon as well to make sure that the flanges do reach the bottom. I've now got the shape I want, but quite a bit of the putty has pushed itself up and across, so this is where I need to do some fine work. I check it with the Loco with the fine scale flanges as well to make sure that runs through smoothly. I've chosen Jack Hackett as the Loco for this particular set of testing because it's the most sensitive and most likely to derail of all my fine scale Locos. So if it goes through okay, the others will too. Now I'm going to cut some of the excess putty off before letting it harden and then filing it and sanding it. My test blob is now hard as rock, so I can now check that other things will run through before I get to work filing and sanding, shaping the now effectively solid thing that is the point frog. The first tool is the Stanley knife. I clear up and throw away as much of the bits of putty that I've cut off as I can. I don't want to introduce any more plastic into the environment than I can possibly avoid. I think that poor speed limit sign there, the 15 mile an hour one, gets clobbered more often than any other single piece of the layout. Poor thing. Very apparent in this video is one of the many joys of garden railwaying, in that your bits of debris from the garden, lawn mowing, twigs, etc., are at 12 inches to the foot, but your railway is at 16 millimetres to the foot, which means that these twigs that are maybe 2 or 3 millimetres in diameter are 19 times that in scale diameter. And then some filing down of the hump in the middle before checking again with the rake of wagons, some of which have LGB wheels, some of which have Accucraft metal wheels. And now Jack Hackett, with fine scale wheels, pulls a wagon with coarse scale LGB wheels through, and I think I can safely say that that has eliminated about 85% of the problem. Certainly looks better. And it stays on even at full speed, although I won't be doing this in regular use. And here I carefully lift off the fully formed frog, preparatory to putting it back in place, but glued down. Previous experience has shown that if I don't do this, they'll just get knocked off and smashed. The epoxy putty is strong, but also brittle. The superglue I use is GH1200, and it's not really a glue at all, it's a bonding agent, a cyanoacrylate bonding agent. It's almost certainly not the very best material to use here, but hey, it's held both my hips in place for 10 years, so I'm not going to complain. A final run through with Jack Hackett and the other set of stock, and it's time to move on to the other three. I use any excuse I can to get the Dremel disc out. In the course of doing this, I found that 2mm square brass tubing actually made a better agent than the copper strip I was using. And I fashioned a little tool, as you can see there, to scoop out the flangeways really, and it worked absolutely brilliantly. And now the acid test. Having checked it with two of the other diesel Locos, both with fine scale flanges, It's time for Jack Hackett to see whether he continues to curtsey on every crossover. There's still a bit of wiggling. I don't think I can ever get rid of that, but it does look a lot better than it did before. When I lived and worked in Sweden, my nickname was Snigel, snail, and this is the best tool of the lot. My wife got me a little snail kneeling mat so that I could get to work on this ground level railway without destroying my knees. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.